A lot of the media have been leaving West Virginia since the last 5 bodies were found at the Upper Big Branch mine, bringing the toll from last week's explosion to 29 men dead. But this is exactly when reporting needs to continue, not stop. West Virginians held a moment of silence Monday, but that should be it for silence, say the bereaved. There shouldn't be silence, for example, about the continuing record of violations that mounts against mine owners Massey Energy, or about that report from the Socialist Workers newspaper that apparently hasn't left the scene, that Massey's been telling its employees they'll lose their jobs if they miss work to attend funerals. Or what about that report from Standard & Poor's, the stock analysts, who Monday upgraded the Massey company to the status of buy from hold? We believe that the financial impact of the Upper Big Branch mine tragedy to Massey Energy will be immaterial, S&P said in a note to clients. Sure enough, Massey's long calculated safety violation fines into their cost of doing business and making profits. But none of this is immaterial to the people who put people first. As one former miner asked CEO Blankenship this week, is a lump of coal that valuable to you that you can't even give the miners a day off to mourn their friends? How about the rest of us? What's that lump of coal worth to us? And what now? We're joined by Jeff Biggers, the author of Reckoning at Eagle Creek, The Secret Legacy of Coal in the Heartland. First, this clip from West Virginia.
At a memorial this afternoon, West Virginia's governor tried to soothe the spirits broken by the nation's deadliest mining disaster in 40 years.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. We have 29 treasures. 29 treasures.
That's just a clip of what's been happening in West Virginia. Cameras are beginning to leave, though. Is there any breaking news as far as you're concerned?
I think the real breaking news, Laura, is whether or not we're going to have an open investigation of this disaster. I think we're beginning to see a rebellion within Massey employees, miners who are now taking off their uniforms and refusing to go back into a completely unsafe and violation-ridden mine. And I think the other bit of breaking news is there's beginning now to have reports that there was some surface blasting on a mountaintop removal operation nearby that might have contributed to the breaking of the strata and led perhaps to some fissures of methane gas.
With respect to these calls for Blankenship himself to resign, how serious is that? They're coming out of the New York State Comptroller's office, who's got pension funds invested in Massey Energy, other investment companies too, calling for the CEO to resign. Even as Standard & Poor's, as I understand it, has actually upgraded the stock from hold to buy, kind of shockingly saying that the company will take no hit for what's happened here.
You know, I think Massey even announced just a few days ago, as we were still looking for the bodies, that they were increasing production in other mines just to make their stockholders happy, that there would be no loss whatsoever. And I think that represents very much to me what is happening now with Massey Energy, that production and profit will always be seen as more important than the safety of their miners. In terms of Don Blankenship, of course, he's an infamous character. He's someone who has flaunted the laws openly and mocked regulations, mocked inspections and inspectors. He's someone who's become larger than life with his anti-global warming rhetoric, someone who, of course, has made it very clear where he stands in terms of profits over safety. So I think what we're finding is even members of the board of directors now are beginning to reconsider whether it's worth it to have someone who clearly, in my opinion, is an outlaw in this industry, representing the 4th largest coal company in the nation.
Here is Blankenship talking about mine safety last year. Take a look.
We also endure a mine safety and health administration that seeks power over coal miners versus improving their safety and their health. As someone who has overseen the mining of more coal than anyone else in the history of Central Appalachia, I know that the safety and health of coal miners is my most important job. I don't need Washington politicians to tell me that, and neither do you. But I also know that Washington and state politicians have no idea how to improve miner safety. The very idea that they care more about coal miner safety than we do is as silly as global warming.
So MNCHA is the enemy of the working man? I mean, how is MNCHA going to respond, and why has MNCHA been so slow in taking a hard line where Massey's concerned?
I think that's a very good point. We should also point out that a member of the board of directors of Massey, in fact, served on the IMSA commission. That the connection between the coal industry, of course, under the Bush administration was remarkable, how they stocked so many coal executives, coal lobbyists into the Mine Safety and Health Administration. And we're still seeing a fallout of that. And I think that's part of the reckoning that President Obama and, of course, Secretary of Labor Solis need to have now, is to really look at, do we have a regulatory crisis on our hands? How is it possible that a mine like the Upper Big Branch can have 500 violations last year, 50 of which were what we call unwarrantable failures? And these are life and death violations, Laura. How can this happen? And yet they tripled coal production in the same years. Essentially, the coal companies are able to play this game of contesting these violations from the federal inspectors and draw them out in the courts for months, if not years, and continue their same unsafe mine production at the same time.
Here's a very quick clip from this weekend on the relationship between Blankenship, Massey, and, well, the courts who are supposed to be regulating the company. Take a look.
We're going to start taking a picture of you. You're liable to get shot. Don't worry.
No, how you doing, Mr. Blankenship? ABC News. Hey, sir. Don't touch my camera. Don't me.
Our run-in with Blankenship is only the latest chapter in a 6-year-long saga involving him, his company, multi-million-dollar jury verdicts, and Blankenship's relationship with certain justices on the state Supreme Court, including trips to the Riviera with the Chief Justice.
There's a lot of money at stake here.
There's a lot of money at stake. There's Blankenship CEO's ship at stake, and then there's the fate of the company. A lot coming together here, Jeff. But quickly, in terms of what we can expect to happen next, you've got that meeting between Hilda Solis, Joe Manchin, and Obama. What are they going to call for? And is there any chance that for once, finally, these investigations could, A, lead to a shutting down of some mines or some real pain for a company that just ignores violations long term, and B, be streamed on the internet? Why can't we see these investigations, these hearings into what happened here? All of us, not just the mining company officials.
I think that's an amazing point we have to continue to make and to pound in the media, that we must have open and public hearings and investigations and public access. That if the Obama administration truly believes in transparency on something that is critical as workplace safety, then this kind of investigation should not be held behind closed doors. But Laura, I do want to point out that we need also to get beyond Blankenship. As he has pointed out, every mine operates in a state of violation, that this industry ultimately believes it can operate in a continual state of denial of regulations. And so the Massey, of course, sort of represents the worst of the outlaws right now in the coal industry, but there are so many other mines today, so many miners who are underground in this very moment, working in completely violation-ridden mines and very unsafe working conditions. And this includes, of course, the reality that still today, 3 coal miners die daily from black lung disease. That's 1,000 coal miners every year dying from a needless workplace safety issue, and that is black lung disease. These are all issues of a huge crisis that President Obama and Secretary Solis really need to come to grips with immediately.
And finally, Jeff, you've talked about the relationship between the way a mine treats the soil, the land, the countryside, and the way it treats its people. What do you mean by that connection?
Well, as my grandfather, who barely survived an explosion himself in 1950, pointed out, the abuse of the coal miner always goes hand in hand with the abuse of the land. And so just a few miles above the Upper Big Branch, all these journalists were there in West Virginia, and very few of them looked up at the fact that there was this huge coal slurry impoundment, billions upon billions of gallons of toxic coal sludge sitting up in a pond. And there was mountaintop removal blasting, strip mining blasting, taking place while they were there within a football field of this earthen dam, of this massive coal slurry impoundment. And of course, mountaintop removal is the most egregious environmental and human rights violation we had. But if this blasting, for example, which perhaps cracked and led to the methane gas explosion, had actually broken the earthen dam, which holds back this huge slurry impoundment, a tidal wave of 72 feet will come sweeping into this same valley where these same coal miners live, who are now struggling with the death of 29 coal miners, and they will have less than 15 minutes to flee this huge tidal wave. And this, to me, is just once again an incredible amount of disrespect for the safety of our American citizens. That once again, the violation, the environmental violations that Massey is doing with its mountaintop removal is very reflective of its underground underground violations for its underground operations.
Jeff, thanks so much. Jeff Biggers is the author of Reckoning at Eagle Creek. There's a link at our website. That's grittv.org. We'll check in with you later, Jeff. Thanks.